This event is brought to you in partnership with the library. Oh, it's brought to you in partnership with the library, the League of Women Voters, WRLR 98.3 FM, and Mano a Mano. This evening's candidate debate is designed to provide residents information from primary sources on your way to becoming an informed electorate. The library supports this event because it meets the goal of the library's mission to provide current information, formal education support, independent learning opportunities, and life enrichment materials to a highly diverse public. I would like to thank the Village of Round Lake Beach Cultural and Civic Center for providing this space to help us host the debate. The Civic Center has done an amazing job of working with all the groups involved with today's event. The Cultural and Civic Center is available for social events, conferences, and community events, and I can say that it has been enjoyable working with them to set up this event. I would further like to thank Diane Sanderson and the League of Women Voters for all their work in coordinating, running, and moderating this debate with our candidates. I especially want to thank Catherine Williams, our moderator for tonight's event. The library is grateful for the special participation of WRLR 98.3 FM. This event will air live tonight on 98.3 FM and then will be rebroadcast in its entirety on October 30th, this Sunday. They will start at 1 p.m. with the county offices debate that we held on the 23rd, and then continue with this broadcast after that. Thanks to Bish Krufko of WRLR, the president, for coordinating these broadcasts. Thanks to Megan McKenna of Mano a Mano for coordinating tonight's translation services. Mano a Mano is dedicated to providing citizenship services to residents of Lake County. And I'll let her say a few words.
Thank you. Good evening. It's nice to see everybody tonight. Thanks for being here. We do have translation services over here in the corner. Guadalupe, if you can raise your hand. And so if anybody is in need of translation services, Mano a Mano is a community-based organization here in Round Lake, and we are dedicated to promoting civic engagement within the immigrant community. And so we're pleased to be a partnership with the library and League of Women Voters and WRLR, and we're happy to be here.
I'd also like to thank each of the candidates for coming out this evening to provide our community a chance to hear directly from them. All the candidates put much work, many hours, and a lot of heart in their campaigns. This event will be a fantastic educational opportunity for our residents to become educated voters. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to everyone here this evening for taking time out of your busy schedules to learn about our candidates and for taking a personal interest in our community. You are the ones who will determine which direction our leaders will take. This event is designed to provide residents an opportunity to get first-person responses from the candidates. This event is for everyone, and it is expected that everyone will be respectful of others and avoid argumentative tones in this discussion. Everyone has the right to hear what each candidate has to say, so we ask you to keep comments or applause to the end so everyone has a chance to listen to the candidates. This is a nonpartisan activity presented by nonpartisan organizations. None of the organizations hosting this event support any candidate or ballot issue, and the opinions of the candidates do not reflect the views of the organizations participating in this event. All candidates in contested races for the 10th U.S. Congressional District, the 31st State Senate, and the 62nd State Representative were invited to participate in today's debate. The League of Women Voters and all the partners presenting this event encourage you to become an informed voter and to take an active role in your government. So let's get started.
Thank you very much. I am delighted to be with you tonight, and thanks for coming out on this crisp fall evening. My name's Catherine Williams. I belong to the League of Women Voters over in McHenry County. It's a tradition that the moderator for an event is not able to vote in the races that you're moderating for. And so, a couple other quick housekeeping details. Please turn off your cell phones. We ask that you do not film, tape, tweet, Snapchat, or any other sort of invention that's been created probably within the last 15 minutes. We've got great coverage through Comcast and the radio station. There's note cards available and little pencils, and you can submit your questions, and then they'll be reviewed by 3 league members, and then they'll be brought up here. We try and avoid duplication. Many times questions are stated very similar. What do you think about, or what are you going to do about? So they try and avoid duplication, and also needs to be appropriate for your office. We're going to draw lots to see which person goes first. We'll start with a 1.5-minute opening statement. Then each question, each candidate has 1 minute. And then at the end, we'll have a 1-minute closing statement. We also ask you to hold your applause till the very end. Another disclaimer, all the questions submitted tonight become the property of the League of Women Voters of Lake County. Candidates, I'd ask you to notice our 2 lovely timers right here in the front row. And when you see a red stop sign, please finish your sentence. And remember, this is a forum, not a debate. It won't go back and forth, so each question will hold its own. But tonight we have a very unique situation. And I've reviewed all the League of Women Voters on a national basis and on the state basis, and I cannot find anything that addresses the issue of at a forum when your team is in the World Series for the first time in 71 years. So, and we are accepting team gear in here. So if it's acceptable, we're going to stop at the end of each session. We'll have someone go out, turn their cell phone on, and get us a score. So that will also help me know who's got their phone on, because I'll know the first person, if we get a hit, goes, So I'm absolutely delighted, and thank you for being here. As you could tell, we got started a little bit late, and unfortunately, in the state representative race for District 62, Rod Dobrinsky was not able to be here due to a family emergency. So what we're going to do is a representative from his office is going to read a 2-minute statement, and then Sam Yingling is going to come up and read a 2-minute statement. Then we'll immediately transition into the District 31 race. So unfortunately, there'll be no questions for that race.
Again, Rod was unable to be here tonight, and I have a statement to read on his behalf. He apologizes for not being able to be here. Illinois is in desperate need for change. Families are being forced out of their homes by skyrocketing property taxes. Springfield hasn't had a balanced budget in 15 years. Political posturing threatens our schools every year. My opponent has been part of the problem. In his 4 years in office, he's voted for 3 out of 4 balanced budgets. He's co-sponsored legislation that would raise taxes on prescription medication, doctor's visits, and on small businesses. He sponsored legislation that would increase property taxes. And every time he's been elected, he's voted to make Mike Madigan the speaker, and he's voted for the rules that give Mike Madigan the power to kill any bill that would reform our state. We deserve so much better. We need reforms that will make government more transparent and accountable. We need reforms that will bring businesses and jobs back to our state. And we need a representative who will not vote for unbalanced budgets. I promise I will work with representatives on both sides of the aisle to get Illinois moving in the right direction, and I'll stand up against either party when they're wrong. Thank you.
Well, I would first like to thank you all so much for coming tonight, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters. I want to thank the Illinois Library, the Round Lake Area Library, and I also want to thank the collaboration of Mano a Mano in their translations. I'm Sam Yingling. I am the state rep for the 62nd District. And as I have stated before in my past candidacies, we are facing a crisis in the state. And the biggest crisis we're facing in the state are outrageous property taxes. Every day I'm out and about, I'm talking to people who literally are being forced out of their homes because they cannot afford these property taxes. And when they're being forced out of their homes, they're not only being forced out of their homes, they're being forced out of the state. And when I was township supervisor here in Avon Township, I took a very aggressive approach at reducing the township's tax levies by 22%. I was the only local elected official who ever bucked the system and said, just because I can max out tax levies and take that money out of the pockets of homeowners, I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to cut those levies. I'm going to put that money back in the hands of the property taxpayers. We have an incredibly regressive and abusive property tax system that needs to be reformed. Right now in Springfield, they're also trying to tax retirement income. Something that I have blocked, I'm opposed to. The last thing we need in this state is to have more taxation, especially on seniors who are living on a fixed income. That is unacceptable, and I will not allow that to happen. But the most important thing that I've done is I've actually passed the property tax freeze bill. First time in history, that will freeze our real estate taxes. They would only be able to go up with voter approval. It would put control directly back into the hands of the people. And that is desperately what we need as a first step to provide cost containment to property taxpayers to ensure that we are going to start to see a reduction in our property taxes. Until we address our property tax crisis, we will continue to govern from crisis to crisis and force people out of the state. I would greatly appreciate your support on November 8th, and I see I'm out of time, so thank you very much.
Each of our candidates will now have an opening statement at 1.5 minutes.
There we
It's
go.
all on. All ready?
Great.
Hi, I'm your state senator, Melinda Bush. 4 years ago at this forum, I asked for your vote and promised to stand up for you in Springfield. I stand before you today, proud to report that I have kept my promise. I've spent the last 4 years putting the needs of the people before party politics. When Springfield politicians rammed through an unbalanced budget, I voted no and called for a compromise to balance the budget without a tax increase. When I found out that rape victims were being billed for the very rape kits used to prosecute them, I wrote the law to fix it. I passed historic legislation to consolidate layers of government to help reduce your property taxes. What I do in Springfield matters, but what I do here at home is equally important. Being your senator is a full-time responsibility. I'm proud of the fact that I've worked for 4 years with the Lake County Opioid Initiative to address the heroin crisis. Our work has expanded the access of life-saving overdose antidotes. To date, 130 lives have been saved here in Lake County. I'm proud of our robust, full-time constituent operation. We host annual job fairs in Round Lake and in Zion, and we work to empower our constituents to change their lives. Like Angie from Antioch. She came to our office and told us a story that she faced challenges with her son. We worked together to get Illinois schools to recognize dyslexia as a learning disability for the first time in the state of Illinois. Today, thousands of school children are getting the additional help and resources they need to grow and learn. Lake County deserves elected officials who put people before politics or ideology. I believe that I have that record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this event on, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming on such a historic night. This is the year we finally pull it off. I'm Mike Amrazowitz. I've never held office before. I'm a career Navy guy. I did 21 years active duty, 12 years as a small business owner after that. I'm taking a leave of absence to make this run because I think we're at a tipping point here in Illinois. We have some of the worst taxes in the country. We have the highest property tax, worst overall tax burden. We have companies and the jobs they create leaving for other states. And we have tax-paying residents leaving at a rate of 1 every 5 minutes because of the property taxes. And this particular race is about contrast. And I applaud Senator Bush on some of her votes. The no fee on the rape kits and the elimination of the tax on feminine hygiene products, they're great. They're issues I would support fully. But the contrast comes in how we would approach the economic crisis here in Illinois. We need to balance our budgets, just like the Constitution requires. We need to make an environment that attracts and keeps businesses here. And we need to end the pattern of entrenched politicians down in Springfield by implementing term limits. Just as I served you in 21 years in the military, I would be honored to serve you as a state senator. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. we have our first question. And Michael, you'll answer first, and then over to Melinda. Is there an area of government that you feel is most prone to wasteful spending? What would you do to correct this? Area of government most prone to wasteful spending, and how would you correct this?
And not to be evasive, they all are. We have so much administrative bloat in our different departments. One example would be education. Now, we have a great university system here. But when you look at what happened since 2004, we had about a 2% increase in student body, a 1.5% increase in the faculty, but we have a 35, almost 40%, depending on the school, increase in administrative jobs. And a lot of these are political appointee jobs, both Republican and Democrat. So we need to have a forensic study to take a look at all these different departments where we could cut spending. Another one is IT. We have 27 different departments running on about 20 different IT systems, some of them running on COBOL, which is the computer language of 1974. Great year, but I think I was in about the 8th grade then. So we need to modernize it so we can make all our levels of government more economical.
Thanks. Well, I'm going to totally disagree and agree with your governor. We're actually spending more money on IT because we need to, because he's right. We are running old systems. It's a problem. And your governor also increased the budget substantially for education this year because we need to spend more money in education. If there are places to cut, they're certainly not there. I can tell you what I believe. I believe we don't adequately look at programs. Programs are created very quickly in the legislature, then they get turned over to a department and become part of the department budget. I believe we need to take those programs and every 5 years look at them. Are they working? Are they not working? Do we need to make changes? What changes do we need to make to them? I believe that's how we actually can make some serious cuts into the money that we're spending. But we need to make sure that we are spending adequate dollars for education, and we need to make sure that Illinois is coming online into the 21st century.
Great, thank you. Our second question now is, how can we decrease the prison population? How can we decrease the prison population? Linda?
Is that me first this time? Thank you. Well, this is something we really have fabulous bipartisan support for in Springfield. We all agree that there are too many people in prison today. There are too many people in prison today because we put them there for petty crimes. We're not spending enough money on mental health. And frankly, we put them there for small drug crimes. What we really need to do is we need to invest more in education from the get-go. And I'm talking about preschool. The statistics are there. The minute a student hits 3rd grade, the trajectory goes this way or this way, depending on whether they can read or not, and read at grade level. We have to invest more in preschool. That's one of the ways we're really going to reduce our prison population, because frankly, the people that are there today can't read. They've been imprisoned for small crimes, and they're also mentally unhealthy. We need to make sure that we're making those investments there so we're not spending it on prisons later.
Well, I do think there is bipartisan support for a forgiveness program for more minor crimes. However, as I did a lot of work in my contracting firm in North Chicago, Waukegan, and as a Navy recruiter, I did a lot of work down on the south side of Chicago predominantly. And one of the biggest reasons we have high crime in certain areas is because of the lack of economic opportunity, and we're slipping in that regard in all across the state, especially in our lower income areas. We need to create an atmosphere where we could attract businesses into all these different communities so all these young kids could have some economic opportunity and are less inclined to commit crimes.
Great, thank you. We're moving right along. Just got a quick reminder, let's make sure those cell phones are off and put away. We're getting great coverage through both the radio and the TV station. Question number 3 is, how do we engage the most people in the political process, and what are the best ways for the average citizen to ensure their voice is heard? So engaging in the political process and the best way for the average person to have their voice heard.
Well, being led in the community. I'm taking a leave of absence to do this run. I'm going to maintain my leave of absence to serve the community. And you're going to see me at a lot of town hall forums and coffees because I think one of the best ways to us have a more informed public is to have more of you involved at the school board level, county board level, library boards, park boards. You guys are the engine that keeps the ideas moving. I've knocked on over 15,000 doors since last September, and I did a lot of reading on all the different policies and all the different bills. 90% of all the great things I've learned are from you guys at the doorstep. So to help me be a better senator is I'm going to be out here picking your brains at all the different forums over the next 4 years, and I'll be encouraging each and every one of you to get involved in your local government. Because the more we can push all these decisions down to the lowest level, the more effective communities we have.
Thank you. So I think the first thing we need to do is make sure that it's easier for people to vote. We need to make voting as easy as possible. Everyone should have access and be able to vote in our elections. I think that's really important. But one of the ways I think we really open up the process is I do a lot of forums. I do them throughout the year. When I'm in Springfield, when I come home, I try to do a couple of them throughout the county. Attend them. Go to things like this. I mean, it really does make a difference. And I got to tell you, each and every one of you, do not be afraid to reach out to your legislators. And if they don't reach out back to you, then they're not doing their job. So when you think there's something wrong, if there's something that you want to discuss, you really need to pick the phone up. Don't be afraid to do that. But I think we need to do a better job of reaching out to the communities and making sure that we are open and available. I do that, but frankly, sometimes the attendance really isn't what we'd like it to be. So I just really recommend you go to things and you get yourself better informed.
Great, thank you. We're staying right on time here. Next question. Would you support a resolution to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment in Illinois? Ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment in Illinois. Michael?
Absolutely. Already did. We'll do it again. We'll keep doing it until we get it ratified. Should have been done a long time ago. It is absolutely absurd that we still don't have an equal rights amendment in this country. So absolutely.
Well, I would defer to a lot of ladies in the room. And this is something where all the stakeholders have to come together. And I talked to a lot of women across the district, and even at the kitchen table or at the family barbecue, there's a mixed feeling on this, and I don't have a direct answer. I think we need to take a real hard look at it and see how much it affects women's rights, women's opportunities, and from that point, we can make a real solid decision.
Great, thank you. All right, question number 5. Do you support single school districts? Would you support consolidating school districts to reduce costs? So do you support single school district and consolidation to save costs?
I support consolidation to save costs, but it shouldn't come from a mandate from Springfield. All of us in this room have an obligation to determine if we want to consolidate any form of government. I'm all for sharing services and consolidation and saving money. And we have here in Round Lake, Springfield should have determined if all the Round Lake communities should fall under one umbrella. That should fall under the guidance of Mayor Rich Hill and all the other mayors in the community to determine if that makes economic sense. It's just like with township government. You have rural communities where township government is actually effective and would actually cost more money to consolidate it with somebody else. However, it doesn't make sense to have township government in a place like Park Ridge or Skokie where it's all municipal boundaries. So the point is, with all this, we need to push that decision all the way down, encourage consolidation, sharing of services, but it shouldn't come from a mandate from Springfield.
So the question was about, should we go from single unit school districts to unit school districts. We already have that here in Round Lake. Frankly, it's not really easy to do. It's not that I'm opposed to it, but imagine that the lines just really don't line up. But let me talk a little bit about consolidation. I believe government consolidation is something we should be talking about in Springfield. We don't mandate it. We create enabling legislation that allows it to happen. I passed a law this year that will allow Lake County to consolidate. It's the only consolidation law that was passed and signed by the governor. Allows Lake County to take 12 lower levels of government, things like mosquito abatement districts, and roll them into the county. I also passed historic legislation to consolidate townships if they choose to consolidate. It's a way that allows it to occur orderly. You know, we all know we have over 7,000 layers of local government in in the state of Illinois. The closest to us is 4,000 in Texas. We need to do what we can to consolidate local government in order to save our property taxpayers' dollars.
Great, thank you. All right. It's a little bit longer question. It's no secret our state is in a fiscal mess and a budget impasse. We tend to rob Peter to pay Paul. Which state service programs do you feel is the most important to continue and why? So talking about the fiscal impasse, but the question really is, which state service programs do you feel is the most important to continue funding and why?
Am I first this time?
Uh,
Are you first this time? Sorry,
You might.
thought I was first this
Yeah,
time.
you are.
Great. Hard to tell who's on first. I hope nobody, if they're Indians. Anyway, so could you repeat the question? I'm sorry. Which service is the
Right,
most important to fund?
Which state service or program do you feel is the most important to continue funding and why?
Education, mental health, services for our elderly, MAP grants for college students. I mean, I don't know who asked it, I apologize, but there is no way you can identify one program that is the most important. There are so many programs at a state level that benefit people that we have to continue. I would never pick education over funding senior centers or funding places where seniors live and get care. I just don't think you can do it that way. There are so many programs that are really important. And I would say, I would be looking to you and asking you, where do you think we should be cutting programs? You know, I absolutely believe that the way that we cut programs, the way that we reduce our tax burden is by looking at individual programs when they're created, bringing them back every 3 to 5 years and really looking at them rather than just turning them over to a department and putting them into a department budget.
Yeah, there is no one particular place that has a glaring need to cut. There's plenty. The one thing we can't cut is education and social services and all the things that fall under that umbrella. But if we got back to fiscal sanity here in Illinois, we could get out of our budget crisis right now. We haven't balanced a budget in 15 years. The Illinois Department of Revenue did a study that had we grown at the national average economically the last 15 years, we would have $19 billion more in the Illinois Treasury, which means we'd be out of deficit spending. And when you think about the resources we have here in Illinois, manufacturing farms, coal mines, great downtown global financial center, we should be in the top 3 nationwide for economic activity. But we're dead last. We're dead last in the country in bond rating. So increasing economic activity is going to help us bring some revenue back into our treasury so we don't have to make really ridiculous choices between which vital programs need to be cut. They can all be funded.
Great, we're staying right on time. All right, the 7th question, we'll start with you. How would you address the lack of insurers' availability on the healthcare marketplace? Next year, we will only have one. How would you address the lack of insurers available on the healthcare marketplace?
That's something to bring a lot of stakeholders here, including Congressman Bob Dole, because when you look at this, the Affordable Health Care Act, there's a lot of great features to it that are taking care of, especially people with pre-existing catastrophic conditions. So we need to work with the federal government and figure out how to get more insurers back into Illinois, because it seems like every 5-6 months we're losing one, and now we're down to one absolutely. And as a result, the premiums keep going up. The number they bandy about is 30% increase in premiums, but sometimes in certain pockets of places it's 50, 60%, and that's not sustainable. So we need to work with the federal government to figure out how they could modify the Affordable Health Care Act to actually make it affordable for the people in our community.
Thank you. So we are going down to just one PPO. There will still be more choices for HMO, but there will be one PPO left in the state of Illinois. Obviously, we have a problem with insurance in the state of Illinois and in this country. You know, I believe that the Affordable Health Care Act was a good idea. I think there are problems with it that really do need to be addressed at the federal level. I'm really hoping they're not going to decide to just get rid of the program. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Make the improvements that need to be made, because frankly, everybody that lives in the state of Illinois and that lives in the United States of America should have health care insurance. You know, and I'm hopeful that those problems are going to be solved there, but there's some work that we can also do at the state level. We had an insurance company that literally went out of business, Lincoln. So there's some work that we can do there, but this really is a federal issue unless, you know, we are going to put a question on the ballot like states like Colorado are doing right now for single payer.
Great. Thank you very much. We've gone through 7 questions tonight, and so now we'll begin to transition into our closing statements. So let's see. Mike gets first. He closes.
All right, well, as I mentioned, this is a election of contrast, and there's a lot of things you could tell just here. We agree on a handful of things, but what it is the economic condition of our state. If you think this state is in great financial shape, then I'm not your guy, because I can't agree with you. This is about contrast. If you're happy with the Madigan-Cullerton machine, the Chicago political machine still running Springfield, I'm not your guy. If you're looking for an outsider with a reform mindset, then I am. When you look at economic growth, we need businesses. And one of us up here is ranked 59 out of 59 state senators by the business group statewide. And one of us presented an economic plan that got their full support. Now, when you look at all of this in its entirety, it's all about building our economy here. And when you look at the Chicago Tribune, they said one of us, when it comes to economic voting, is irresponsible and anti-taxpayer, and said one of us will bring fiscal sanity to Springfield. So that said, if you're looking for fiscal reform, I'm your guy. Again, I thank you all for coming tonight. I'm not going to spend any much more time. We need to get home and watch the Cubs play that first game on their way to winning their first World Series in 108 years. Good night.
Clearly, my opponent hasn't looked at my record. I have a record of standing up and doing the right thing. When I went down to Springfield, look, I'm a 60-year-old woman. I turned down a pension. I didn't go there because I wanted to be part of a party. I went there to represent this area. Am I a Democrat? Absolutely. But you come first. I've taken 5 major votes against my party. You know, I voted against budgets. I voted against them when they wanted to create an election commission here in Lake County. I voted against them when they wanted to create another casino that actually wouldn't bring in money. When I think it's wrong, I'm not doing it. And I think we need more of that. We don't need people that are espousing ideology and are willing to be aligned on one side or the other. We need people that are willing to look at common sense decisions, weigh both sides, and make those decisions. I've been that person. It has been my honor to represent you. I pray that I have earned your vote to go back, because I want to fix things. That's what I went down to do. The job isn't done. It's not anywhere near done. But I'm looking to go back, and I hope that I've earned your vote. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Go Cubs. I became a fan in 1969. I feel I'm owed. Right, Claire and June?
The next race is the U.S. 10th Congressional District. We have Brad Schneider and Bob Dole. So they'll each get 1.5 minutes of an opening remark. So, begin.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all for taking the time to come. It's been 71 years since the Cubs were in the World Series, and their first pitch has already supposedly happened. So I want to thank you all for being engaged in the process enough to forego that, at least for the time being. As a a small business owner and the father of 3 young children, my top priority for our community is to make sure that it is safe, healthy, and strong. In order to move forward, I do believe we need to break through the gridlock, which is why I've taken on my party when I believe that they're wrong, and have worked with the other side when I believe that they're right. And ultimately, I believe that this is one of the reasons, and it has been, that every major news organization that is endorsed in this race, whether it be the Chicago Tribune, the Daily Herald, the Chicago Sun-Times, has endorsed my candidacy as a bridge builder, someone that's going to work with the other side of the aisle, as opposed to my opponent who has had a partisan record when he was in Congress. But ultimately, as we've seen, not only these endorsements, but it's been the endorsements of 20 mayors throughout the district, because ultimately we've been focused on what's going on right here in the Round Lake area. And honestly, we have a district office that's here in Round Lake. We've held jobs fairs right here in Round Lake. Why? Because this is an area that we know is in need, and one area that we're going to stand up and fight for day in and day out. So at the end of the day, the endorsement that I'm looking for, whether we have it from across the political spectrum, from the Human Rights Campaign to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but the endorsement that I'm looking for is yours. So on November 8th, I ask humbly for your vote.
Hi, good evening. It's an honor to be here. I want to thank you for doing this tonight rather than Thursday night when the Bulls open their season. It is good that you're all here, especially, as Bob said, the fact that you're putting so much importance on this election, that you come and hear us, and hopefully we'll have a time to see the Cubs win tonight later today, or later
Oops,
this evening.
can we get that phone turned off, please? Thank you.
All right. I'm here. I'm asking for your endorsement and your vote on November 8th as well. Before I go into issues, let me tell you a little bit about myself and where I come from. Like many of you here, I suspect our stories are similar. They have roots somewhere else. In my case, typical is my grandmother, who came as a refugee from Russia in 1912. The interesting part of her story is they were supposed to be on the Titanic, but her little brother got sick, so they waited a week. Otherwise, this would be a short story. They came to a country that welcomed them with open arms, gave them opportunity. My grandmother grew up, met my grandfather, had her children who had opportunities to go to college, to pursue careers. My sisters and I had similar opportunities. I came here in 1979 to go to Northwestern, studied engineering, spent a career as an engineer, as a consultant, working with small businesses. In business school, I met my wife, Julie. We made our home in Deerfield in 1991. We raised our 2 boys, built our career, and most importantly, have made this our home. I'm running for Congress because I want to make our home better. I want to make our community stronger. I want to make sure that every child has the opportunity for a quality education, that we all have access to quality, affordable health care, and that we all have the opportunity to continue the American promise that each generation gives to the next, a future that's more prosperous and secure than what our parents and grandparents sacrificed for us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I think they're still screening some of the questions. How would you address the lack of insurers available in the healthcare market? Next year, we will only have 1. So how would you address the availability of healthcare insurers in the marketplace?
Thank you. This is a critically important question because, as I said in my opening remarks, we need to be a country, I believe, where every American has access to quality, affordable health care. And part of the way of getting that quality, affordable health care, I believe, is having competition in the marketplace. And Lake County here is one of the counties around the country that are only going to have one insurer providing insurance in the marketplace. I supported and continue to support the Affordable Care Act. At the time it was introduced, I said it was far from perfect, but it was a step in the right direction, an important step to move our country forward. There are things in the Affordable Care Act that are crucial to continue, such as the fact if you have a pre-existing condition, you can get insurance. If you get sick, you can't get kicked off the insurance plan. Your kids can stay on your insurance program until age 26. 20 million people have insurance today that didn't have insurance before the Affordable Care Act. But we have to work to bring more companies in. Some of the things we can do, for example, is requiring companies who are providing Medicare Advantage insurance in a state, require them to participate in the insurance market as well. Providing other companies the opportunities to come in and manage the risk pool so that it becomes affordable for them to compete. Those are 2 ideas I would propose.
Great. Thank you.
They just released the new estimates for insurance plans across the country. And I do think that this is something that is vitally important. I hear from constituents on a daily basis that are struggling to make ends meet and struggling to be able to find affordable coverage for their families. Across the nation, we're going to have an average of a 25% increase, at least according to the White House today that released those figures. 25%. We had a neighboring governor said the Affordable Care Act is no longer affordable. And ultimately, what we need and what we want is we want quality coverage for people right here at home. The family of four that's struggling to make ends meet, that all of a sudden their premiums have gone through the roof and the deductibles are sky high, frankly, they have catastrophic coverage. They don't have coverage that's actually meeting the needs of their family. We do need to allow more competition in the marketplace, and frankly, we need to expand the number of plan options that are out there. A number of plans that a number of businesses were able to offer have been made illegal today. That is a problem. We need to have more competition in the marketplace. And ultimately, as we look at what's going on, this year, the Affordable Care Act came up for a vote. I was one of 3 Republicans that said, no, we shouldn't get rid of it until we've got a replacement to put it in place.
Great, thank you. And we'll start with you, Mr. Bolt. Have you made your household income tax report available for public viewing?
I have made my household tax returns available, and they have been publicly reported in the media, something I've done and actually believe it's important to do since I first decided to run for office. Actually, the tax returns from the year prior to me holding office, and then every year since, has been available for scrutiny through the media that has been reported in the newspapers. I think it's important. I think it's certainly been transparent. It's something that my opponent has not taken those steps. In fact, has taken steps to actively shield his household income. He has actually, gone through great measures to do that. And I would simply say, if we want to see the tax returns, you want the household tax returns.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider?
So this is a clear example of my opponent telling you a lie. My tax returns, every single page of my tax returns, are publicly available. They are available on the internet. What you heard Mr. Dole tell you is his were made available to the press. You can't see them. You can't see what they say. You don't see his corporate returns. My tax returns, page 1 to the last page, for the last 3 years, are available at schneiderforcongress.com/taxes-returns.
Great, thank you very much. And we'll start with you, Mr. Schneider, on the next question. What is the current status of the criminal justice bill co-sponsored by Senator Durbin, and what will you do about federal sentencing reform? So, criminal justice bills sponsored by Senator Durbin, and what will you do about federal sentencing reform?
Well, we need to absolutely address the criminal justice system in our country. Too many of our young people across the country are getting literally trapped in a justice system where they're arrested for example, a nonviolent drug offense, possession of marijuana, and they end up in prison. 93% of the people in Cook County Prison are there awaiting trial. They have not been tried or convicted. They are awaiting trial but can't afford to pay bond. They sit there falling further behind in their education, losing opportunity, being further radicalized. We need a criminal justice system that treats people with respect. We need a justice reform that will take these kids and rather than having them rot in jail waiting for trial, give them a second chance to get on the right track, to get the education they need, to learn the lessons, to be successful adults contributing to our society. We have to work to make sure we are putting the people away or out of the system in prison who are a danger to our society, but the young people who are convicted or who are engaged in nonviolent crimes, we need to make sure that they're not going into a system and being lost for their future.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Jolt.
Criminal justice reform is something that I think is necessary, absolutely critical. And we need to think differently about what we're doing because we have jails today, and we can go over to the Lake County Jail. A good chunk of those individuals are actually incarcerated today because of a drug conviction. And oftentimes we have mandatory sentences, and frankly, I think we need to allow those in the criminal justice system, certainly our judicial folks, to be able to use their judgment on what is appropriate, as opposed to saying, this is the third time and you have a mandatory sentence. We've actually worked on trying to bring folks in to deal with criminal justice system, and frankly, one of the things that I find so fascinating is the fact that if you get incarcerated, one of the things they'll take all of your possessions. If someone doesn't come to pick up those possessions within the first short period of time, 60 days or so, they throw it out. What's in there is your Social Security card, your license, and what are the first things that you ask for when you leave in terms of going to apply for a job? Your Social Security card and your license. And ultimately, if we know if they're not getting a job in a short period of time, they're going a 66% chance of going right back into prison. This is something that we can and must deal with in terms of it. And ultimately, as we look at some of the work that is going on within our police department and with the state's attorney's office, we're trying to think about things differently, like a way out for those that are perhaps using drugs and the like and are being incarcerated for it.
Great, thank you. All right, the next one, and Mr. Dolt, we'll start with you. What specifically is common sense gun control? Do you support national reciprocity of carry permits? So a two-part.
Let me just go in because I think this is critically important. And frankly, one that I'm very proud of in terms of my record, leading on common sense reforms, what I think are important. And so when I first came to Congress back in 2011, worked with those on the other side of the aisle to make sure we have comprehensive background checks, which all experts will tell you is the number one thing that we can do to keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill, violent felons, known or suspected terrorists. So the comprehensive background checks is something that I came in and supported and still do to this day. When I came back, worked with Gabby Giffords. Many of you know Gabby Giffords, a Democratic congresswoman who was shot. She now runs an organization called American for Responsible Solutions. She came to our defense when my opponent was saying my record was anything but stellar. And you probably have seen it in your mailboxes. She said Bob Dole has taken on the gun lobby, and frankly, Bob Dole has been a bipartisan champion for common sense reforms. The No Fly, No Buy, which is a bill designed to make sure known or suspected terrorists can't get weapons, I co-sponsored in the first Congress. I co-sponsored when I came back to Congress. What's interesting is my opponent didn't co-sponsor that very piece of legislation when he had the chance in the 113th Congress.
Great. Mr. Schneider?
Thank you. For me, this is not a political issue, it's a personal issue. I'm named after my mother's uncle who was shot when an assailant walked in his office, shot him 4 times, and waited for him to die. When I got to Congress, the very first speech I gave as a member of Congress was calling for gun safety legislation, calling for a restoration of the assault weapons ban, which my opponent has refused to say whether he'll back, calling for universal background checks, dealing with trafficking across state lines, making that a federal crime. I didn't stop with the speech. I went further. We helped introduce comprehensive gun legislation. I was proud to co-sponsor the broadest legislation we've seen in our Congress that dealt not only with limiting the access to guns of people who shouldn't have it, but dealing with the mental health issues around gun violence. 2/3 of the people who die each year will take their own lives with guns. Dealing with the economic issues of the communities that are so badly afflicted with gun violence. There's only one reason we haven't had a vote, whether it's on No Fly, No Buy or any other gun legislation. It's because the speaker, the Republican speaker Bob Dole supports, won't allow that to come for a vote. I will only support a speaker who will bring gun legislation to the floor for a vote in the next Congress, and I think Mr. Dole should do the same.
All right, thank you. This is question number 5. Mr. Schneider, we'll start with you. How have you crossed the aisle and worked with the opposing party to get our government working again? How have you worked across the aisle and get government working?
Thank you. I had the unfortunate experience of being in Congress in 2013 when the Republicans shut down our government in yet another effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That was September 30th of 2013. The next day, October 1st, I joined with a group of 20 Democrats, 20 Republicans, meeting every day trying to find ways to get the government back open again, getting people back to work, services provided to those who so desperately depend upon it. I stood up to my party and voted for any effort we could to get even parts of the government open, providing the services people so desperately need. I know the only way we are going to solve our problems as a nation is we find ways to come together as a nation. I'm a proud Democrat, but I have always said I will work with anyone as long as they come to the table with an open mind, good ideas, and a willingness to work together to solve our problems. I did that when I was in Congress, and I look forward to doing it when I get back.
I find it interesting that you stood up to your party when it came to opening the government. That's a problem. Time and time again, I've been ranked as one of the most independent, bipartisan, and effective members of the United States Congress. That's by every nonpartisan organization that's taken a look. When I look at this Congress and what we've been able to do in a bipartisan way, for the first time in 17 years, we have a way to pay doctors that take care of our seniors. Really important. For the first time in 14 years, we have an education bill that actually takes power away from the federal government and empowers mom and dad and local school districts right here at home. For the first time in a decade, we have a long-term surface transportation bill, a highway bill, which is so important for our community, for our businesses and the like. But let me tell you about one. The prescription drug epidemic, the heroin overdoses that are happening all around our community. We worked with local stakeholders when we found out this was a huge crisis and frankly drafted a law, Lolly's Law, to be able to combat this. It went through the House, through the Senate. I worked with those colleagues on the other side of the aisle. President Obama has signed it into law. This is going to save lives. This is the type of leadership that I have and continue to provide in the United States Congress in a bipartisan way, and I'm asking for your vote again on November 8th.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Schneider? Oh, all right. Sorry about that. Number 6, how has your experience with small business influenced your vote?
Well, let me start off with that. As a small business owner, I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, this is the backbone of our economy. And how it's affected my vote is the fact that we want to make it easier for entrepreneurs and businesses to put the key in the door, easier for them to hire the next individual. My opponent's going to say that he is a small business owner and that he is in favor of small business, but yet the largest small business advocacy group in the country rated votes and voted against small business 70% of the time. Now, that's not helpful for small business. Now, he's going to say that the Affordable Care Act was the main reason behind it. The Affordable Care Act was not one of the votes that he was dinged on at all. So when you vote against 70% of the time, that's not a plus for business. For me, I recognize that our small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy. If we can create a business-friendly environment where half of our businesses, the 29 million across our country, can hire one person, think about where we'd be then. That's what we need to do because you know what? More jobs is not a Democrat or Republican idea. It's an American idea that helps our community grow each and every day.
Please hold your applause. Please hold your applause. Thank you.
Thank you. I spent my career working with small businesses, helping family-owned and closely held businesses develop strategies, grow and expand, hire people, introduce new products, and drive our economy. That's why when I got to Congress, the first thing we're asked after election is what committees do you want to be on? I asked to be on the Small Business Committee because I understand that 65% of the jobs in this country are created by small businesses. Every recession except this current one, it has been small businesses that have led us out of the recession. But this one's been different because small businesses have not had the same opportunity and the same confidence to invest in the future. On the Small Business Committee, I worked to improve their access to quality talent. In fact, the first bill I introduced, the America Works Act, worked with educational institutions and industry to teach people the skills to fill the over 600,000 to 800,000 open manufacturing jobs we have in this country. I worked to help banks provide capital. One of the biggest problems businesses will tell you is they can't get capital. We should allow our local banks, our community banks, to know their customers and invest in these small businesses. And I worked on legislation to do that, and I'll do that when I get back. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Schneider, we'll start question number 7 with you. What American ideals do you feel are most often forgotten by politicians in Washington?
It's a great question. I think what we're seeing, and if you look at this current election, the best ideal of this country is that we are not based as Americans on where we come from or how we look or what we believe. We're Americans because we're committed to this idea of a nation working together and lifting up each other. It's very unfortunate you've seen in this last election candidates screaming and yelling at each other, demeaning each other. In fact, effectively trying to disenfranchise each other. We need to get past the idea that either one party or the other party has all the answers, because quite honestly, neither party does. We need to get back to the idea that we're all Americans, regardless of the color of our skin, our religion, whether we're from the north, south, east, or west of the country. We need to get back to the idea that working together as Americans, there's no challenge too big for us to tackle.
When we look at American ideals, I think they're so important. It's about family. It's about how we grow together. And ultimately, I do think that if you take a look at the campaigns that are being waged before you, we have waged a positive campaign, giving people a reason to go to the polls and affirmatively vote for us. What's interesting to me is to take a look at the campaign that's being run by my opponent. And yet, he's been called out by everyone from the Human Rights Campaign, the largest gay rights advocacy group, to the Washington Post for lying to voters. And that's not right. My mother and father are here, and they gave me a plaque when I was young. It says, "Your integrity determines your identity." And ultimately, when I think about American ideals, the idea that your integrity is strong and steadfast is absolutely critical. It's something that I give to my children because you know what? There's a lot of things that people can take away from you, but your integrity is one of those things that is absolutely bedrock. It's something that I'm very proud of, and I wish we had more integrity in the campaigns that were being waged across the country today.
Great. Thank you. Question number 8. We'll start with you, Mr. Dault. How do you think the tax code is burdensome, and how would you fix it?
I do think the tax code is burdensome. Well, I guess I should ask you, how about 70,000 pages? That's pretty burdensome as far as I'm concerned. And ultimately, when you look at the complexity of the tax code, most people just, they throw up their arms. They say, I can't navigate this. But ultimately, we're seeing this being used as a weapon against us for our businesses, for our small businesses and for our big businesses. This district is a unique district, and frankly, we have more Fortune 500 companies in this district than any other district in the country. We have 4th largest manufacturing district. Our tax code, we want to make sure that our tax code allows us to be competitive. Right now, it doesn't. We have the highest taxes in the entire world, and what we're seeing is we're seeing businesses pick up and leave, or they're being swallowed whole and taken over by foreign competitors. We can take a look at this from the state level. Has anybody been up to Pleasant Prairie lately? It's a who's who of former 10th District companies. And honestly, we need to create that business-friendly environment here. So in the Ways and Means Committee, which is the committee that I sit on, the most powerful committee in the Congress, we are working on tax reform, and it needs to be bipartisan, because anything that's going to be this big to try to make sure that we have a competitive advantage over foreign competitors is going to require bipartisan support.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
So we do need to reform our tax code. It's overly complex, it's outdated, and it's full of inequities. They give too many of the benefits to the people at the top while putting too much of the burden on the people in the middle. The tax code proposed, or the tax reform proposal proposed by Paul Ryan, is estimated to give 99.6%, I'm going to repeat that, 99.6% of the benefits to the top 1%. Think about that. Is that how we move our country forward? Asia is expected to grow its middle class over the next 30 years by 86%. United States, our middle class is shrinking. And yet, the tax proposal that Mr. Dault's party is proposing, that his speaker is pushing forward, would give all of the benefit to the people at the top. We do need to reform our tax code. We need to bring down the corporate rates so we are competitive globally and eliminate the subsidies, for example, to big oil companies or companies like GE that can often years pay 0 in taxes. But we have to take care of individual taxes as well and simplify them and make it easier for individuals and families to grow their businesses, to pay their bills. But I'm not going to support a proposal that gives all the benefit to the 1% at the top.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Schneider, we'll start with you for question number 9. How do you feel about campaign finance reform and dark money in campaigns? How do you feel about campaign reform, dark money?
I believe the Citizens United Supreme Court decision that has created this, unleashed this torrent of outside money, secret money coming into our campaigns, allowing corporations to influence our elections. I believe that Supreme Court decision is going to go down as one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in our country's history. That's why I believe we need, if not a constitutional amendment, legislation, or ideally a Supreme Court who will overturn this decision and put us back on a path where it is the people, the voters, who decide our elections. That's why I think it's so unfortunate that my opponent, when, as a member of Congress, as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, voted to allow individuals and corporations to continue to give money to C4s, these special interest service groups that can funnel money into elections and influence our elections without sharing the identity.
Oops, we're going to ask folks, please turn off your cell phones. Don't record, please. Great, thank you. I'm sorry.
May I ask for my time back on this question?
A couple more.
Thank you.
Please.
So we need to have transparency. We need to have reform so that our elections are back in people's hands. And we need to have an opportunity to take corporations, to take the billionaires out of our elections. That's why I believe we should overturn Citizens United, and I'm proud to have the endorsement of the organization working to do that, End Citizens United.
Great, thank you.
So I do believe Citizens United is a real problem. And when it first came out, I said it was a problem and I didn't support it because I believe that it is going to infuse money into the election system that ultimately is going to be bad for all of us, our citizens, and elections in general. What I find so fascinating is that End Citizens United is actually one of the super PACs that's coming in running ads against me right now. Right? So, and that I think is fascinating. The other thing that I find fascinating is that my opponent was just called out in the media as the #1 most egregious user of a loophole to send dark money into his campaign 30 times, let me repeat that, 30 times the legal limit. So for someone that says this is so bad for the people, this is the same individual that is using the loophole to come in and take your voice away on dark money into the campaign. This is the #1 most egregious campaign in the entire country that my opponent is running right now.
So I think I need to respond to that, if I can.
We're not allowing responses, so we'll go ahead, move on to question number 10. And number 10 is, what have you done to help the Round Lake area? And Mr. Dolt, we'll start with you.
Well, I certainly appreciate the question. And ultimately, Round Lake is a very important area. Such an important area that we decided to put our district office, one of our district offices, right here in Round Lake. Because we want to make sure the community has access to us, and we want to make sure that they know that they're important to us. We want to hear from them. We also had a jobs fair, because we know what? Jobs in the economy is still the #1 thing that we hear from people. And so we had a jobs fair right here in Round Lake Beach, brought in a bipartisan way. We actually worked with Sam Yingling on that jobs fair. We created a Young Women's Leadership Academy right here in Round Lake. Some of the Round Lake women were a big part of the Women's Leadership Academy, giving them exposure into what's going on. Some of the home daycare centers had a big issue, and we made sure that that got rectified right here at the state. We put together a lending library right in Round Lake, right down by La Luz. You might have seen it with some benches and some books there in the lending library. Something that's important as we look at education, and we've been working with Don Mendoza, the principal, as we look at what some of the egregious things that are happening in the state with regard to education funding that we've been able to nip in the bud.
Great. Mr. Schneider, what
Thank
have you done to help?
So when I was in office, we too put a great focus on Round Lake because it is so important. We had the job fairs here. In this very room, we had a citizens swearing in ceremony because immigration is such an important issue here in Round Lake. Every community in our district is important, and I am committed to working in every community and proud of what I did. But I also have to address what Bob Dole just told you about campaign finance. Look, I am a proud Democrat, and I am happy to do commercials with my party. And it says on the commercials, paid for by Brad Schneider and the Democratic Party. That's not breaking the rules. Those are the rules, and those are the transparency. But the fact of the matter is Mr. Dolt continues to help private wealthy individuals and corporations and outside foreign entities give to these charities who are then influencing our elections. This was a bill he voted for. That's a fact. That's not anything made up. You can check the voting record on that.
All right, the 11th and last question before our closing statements. What are the greatest challenges for the less affluent citizens of your district, and how do you plan to address them? Mr. Schneider?
Thank you. I think the greatest challenges for the people living in our district, the working families, is trying to find a system that works for them. That's why I'm running for Congress. We need an economy that's working for everyone, not just the fortunate few. That's why I would oppose the tax reform that gives all the benefits to the 1%. We need an education system that, regardless of where a young child lives, they have an opportunity to quality education. They have an opportunity for universal preschool education so they get to kindergarten ready to learn. And they have the support all the way through high school so they graduate with the skills and lessons to succeed as adults, whether in college or directly in career. We need to help working families by making college more affordable, rather than voting for a budget, as my opponent did, that would cut Pell Grants, would end the Medicare guarantee as we know it, would make it harder for working families to make ends meet. We need to make it easier for working families to achieve their dreams, to provide their children health care, put a roof over their head, and know they will have a secure and dignified retirement.
Good, thank you.
I think as we look at what we can do for the less affluent, it's about education, no question about it. Education is going to be the key for everything that we want to do, whether it's curing cancer or whether it's tackling poverty. And as we look at tackling poverty, that's another thing as we try to focus on those areas. Are we giving them the skills necessary to be able to compete and succeed in today's society? I look at organizations like Youth Build, which we've been very active in and frankly are a big supporter of. We were able to secure, with John Lewis, robust funding for Youth Build, brought $1.2 million into Lake County, which I think is absolutely critical. I do think that as we look at education, one of the things that I put in as an amendment into the education bill is something that Illinois is doing. They're actually taxing some of the neediest school districts 36% if you use the federal dollars that come in into our school districts. 36%. And what that means for a district like Round Lake, Don Mendoza said that they could have hired an additional 6 teachers in a given year. Why? Because we do things incorrectly in the state of Illinois, taxing, in essence, some of the neediest school districts out there. I actually fought for the Round Lake area and for some of our neediest schools, and I do believe that's how we help some of the less affluent areas to be able to level the playing field and get ahead.
Great, thank you very much. And now we'll go to our closing statements, 1 minute each. Go ahead.
I believe I go first, correct?
Correct.
All right. Thank you. I'm asking for your vote on November 8th so I can go back to Congress to continue the work we started 4 years ago, and protect the legacy of President Obama moving forward. I want to work to make sure we have an economy that is working for everyone. I want to build on the successes of the Affordable Care Act, but fix the problems so we don't see the types of increases we're looking at next year. I want to make sure that every kid in this country does have that opportunity for an education so they can go on and achieve their dreams. I want to make sure that we protect Social Security and Medicare, not just for this generation, but for generations to come. I know we have to protect our environment and pass it to the next generation, which is why I have the endorsement of the Sierra Club. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the National Committee to Protect Social Security and Medicare and the Alliance of Retired Americans, because I know we have to ensure the promise of a secure and dignified retirement. I'm proud to have the endorsement of John Lewis, as well as the endorsement of Barack Obama, because they know I'm the one whose values and priorities match the values and priorities of this district, and I ask for your vote and endorsement too on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. We have the endorsement of 20 local mayors, and I think that's really important because we work and roll up our sleeves day in and day out with the folks right here that are making things happen. The people that are closest to all of you. We've done over 1,000 events throughout the district. Why? Because we want to hear from you. We want to know that we're accessible. There's a reason why every single newspaper, the Chicago Tribune, the Daily Herald, the Chicago Sun-Times, the Chicago Jewish Star, all of them have endorsed my candidacy. Every nonpartisan organization out there that has taken a look at the records between us has ranked me one of the most independent, bipartisan, effective members of the United States Congress. You, the citizens, have a unique opportunity to compare my record versus my opponents. And ultimately, if you have an opportunity to do that, we have a record of accomplishment. My opponent was ranked one of the least effective members in the United States Congress. But ultimately, as we go forward, this is about you. This is about families. This is about how we move forward together. As a small business owner, I know that the only path forward is working in a bipartisan way. So help me go back to Congress and continue to fight for you. I ask for your help, support, but most importantly, I ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.